Hello there. Welcome to Play Pause Rewind, our 38th episode. Intro is a little bit different there because of what we're talking about. I did a little special thing there. But Niles, how have you been the last couple weeks since our last episode?
I've been all right. Very excited to talk about what we got to talk about today because you and I are such big Star Wars fans. We got strong opinions about the series, and I think this will be a very interesting episode because you and I, not to spoil too much, have a little bit of conflicting opinions this time around.
We do.
Yes, but besides that, I've been all right. You know, a little trouble with the news, but how about you, Dylan?
Yeah, just right off the bat, fuck the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yes,
it's a shame their parents didn't believe in abortion. You know, yeah. So that's really shitty. Not a good time to be an American person, but other than that, I'm also doing okay personally. See, that's the weird like contradiction in these like horrible days wherein, right, like personally my life is pretty good and I'm happy, but the world is just falling apart around us and you have to reconcile with that, and also the people less fortunate than us that we should be helping. Yeah.
It's a strange time to be alive for sure, and you know, I do consider myself to be lucky in many regards, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yes, definitely so. But we're not going to dwell on that too much, because it's depressing, and like last episode, we're going to try to have fun instead of talk about the depressing stuff. But you guys are in for a treat this week because we're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we disagree on the quality of this show. So as Star Wars fans do, when you disagree, we're just going to bully each other for an hour, because that is what this fandom does, you know, bully each other and or be really racist and sexist to cast members, unacceptably so, which happened again for this. So we'll get that shit off right off the bat. Moses Ingram, who plays Reva in this show, who does a terrific job in the show, was of course harassed by Star Wars fans. She and Lucasfilm knows the drill now at this point. They warned her ahead of time that this would happen. And it was so bad that it prompted Ewan McGregor to make a video on the official Star Wars social media accounts, disowning these fans, which I want to say kudos to Lucasfilm for finally pushing back on this. They didn't protect Daisy Ridley. They didn't protect John Boyega. They didn't protect Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams or Kathleen Kennedy. But now they're finally doing a little bit. So that's good.
Yeah, they should have. I imagine that they know that this shit is coming, where these fans are going to be really toxic about even the smallest change or like deviation from the formula,
or just a black person.
Exactly, or just someone of a different race or gender. Like, you know, it's upsetting that the Star Wars fandom is so toxic. And full disclosure, this podcast is a non-toxic area, so don't bring any of that shit here. We're just talking about fun stuff, a lighthearted conversation about the show. But yes, I feel like Lucasfilm, they could have done a little bit more to prepare for it in advance, but I am glad that they kind of I'm caught up to speed really quickly on it. You know,
I'm glad they're standing up for their people now. Because this fandom, and granted, it's a small part of the fandom, I think, a small but very vocal part, but like this has been going on for 20 years. Star Wars fans ruined Jake Lloyd's childhood, little Anakin Skywalker. They harassed the cast back then. They almost drove Ahmed Best to jump off a bridge. Right after he'd had a kid. But yeah, so good on Lucasfilm for finally getting around to that. But we're going to do non-spoilers for Obi-Wan for a little bit. And then we'll jump into spoilers. Time codes for each are in the description. So if you haven't seen the show yet and you want to watch it before listening, you can pop out after that. But Niles, what are your general non-spoilery thoughts on Obi-Wan? I guess beforehand, we should say directed by Deborah Chow, written by a bunch of people. Joby Harold, Hussein Amini, Stuart Beatty, and Andrew Stanton. Stars Ewan McGregor, Moses Ingram, Hayden Christensen, and Vivia Lyra Blair. And it kind of follows Obi-Wan in between episodes 3 and 4 as he's, kind of depressed about all the shit that happened in episode 3, and he has to go on an adventure evading these inquisitors. Yeah, but what were your non-spoilery thoughts on the show?
Yeah, so I think when I put it on like a scale between like all the live action shows for Star Wars we've gotten so far, with Boba Fett and Mandalorian, and now this, not too many so far.
Yeah.
But I feel like this one it definitely outranks Boba Fett. And I'd probably put it just about on par with the Mandalorian, for a lot of reasons. And, I think for me, this was kind of a good golden standard of what a Star Wars series could be, and I think I have an affinity, of course, for the prequels, kind of similar to you do, but we also have some deep resentment of the prequels because they're boring and horribly written, and the dialogue is terrible, and there's no character development or emotional connections.
I think we both have nostalgia for them, but don't see them as good movies. Like I find the prequels very thematically interesting, but but George completely botched the execution of almost everything he was going for, which is a shame because there's tremendous potential in that story, and I don't think any of it was realized.
Yes, I agree, and I think you're right. It is a little bit of nostalgia. So when this series was announced, I definitely was concerned about it because it's not something that we really need or really needed at all, because episode 3 tied up everything really neatly. Like every storyline was complete, tied it up, and left it to bake until 20 years later when A New Hope comes out.
Right.
So we really didn't need this series, but I think they did a good job of walking the middle ground in the set parameters of the universe. You can't do this, you can't do this, like, but we have like 20 years of empty space where we could, hey, let's throw in a storyline there. So I think that they did a good job of walking that fine line in the middle of not like destroying too much of the chronology of Star Wars or like kind of ruining it. But I think they also did a good job of integrating some new ideas along with the rhyming tropes, the repeated tropes of Star Wars, and kind of making it look and feel like Star Wars. So, and I really appreciated all the performances. I thought Ewan McGregor did a fantastic job, and so did Hayden Christensen, all the supporting cast. Like, I really did enjoy this show. Like every week that this episode came out, I was ready to watch it, and I was just kind of ready to put on my nostalgia glasses again and return to the good old days of post Revenge of the Sith, when it was kind of fun, as a kid. So I think that's kind of my initial thoughts. I like the series a lot, but I will say, it's not perfect, and there's a lot of things where I think it could have been stronger or a little bit more developed. What about you, Dylan? What are your initial thoughts on the series?
Yeah, well, first off, I'll say, like, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Star Wars fans. This is how you acknowledge when someone has different opinion. It's good. It's good that someone likes something. There are parts of this that I like, but overall, I don't think the show is very good. And I also struggle a little bit thinking about it and analyzing it because a part of me is doing that thing that I criticize people for doing all the time, because I had what I wanted this show to be. And I think I may have talked about it on the show with you before, but like, I knew they would not make what I wanted. Because what I wanted was basically the first episode and then build from there. I wanted Obi-Wan like broken and PTSD riddled on Tatooine, having to just, on maybe a very small scale journey, or even with no journey physically, just like recenter himself and be ready for when it's time to train Luke. I didn't want action. I didn't even want lightsaber fights, and I definitely did not want Darth Vader. So I struggle a little bit because I'm trying to meet this on its own terms, which I'll do for most of the episode. But like, that was always in my mind. It's like, this could have been interesting, and it could have been, it could have pushed the envelope of what Star Wars is, like, a little bit more than this did. But that being said, I don't think it's very good overall, I think it looks really cheap. I think the camera work was really, it just did not work for me. Deborah Chow was clearly going for something. There was a lot of shaky cam handheld stuff, and it just does not work for me. Shaky cam has not worked for me outside of the Bourne movies ever, I don't think.
Sure, yeah.
Even in the Dark Knight movies, like, I don't like it, and I'm glad that Nolan goes away from it towards the end. But yeah, it just feels cheap, and I feel like we have found the limits of what the volume can do. Like,
yes,
I think I'll say the specific instance in spoilers as I'll spoil something, but a lot of the environments feel very flat, and there's just no verticality going on, and everything feels small.
Yeah,
and I think
that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a similar problem to the prequels and blue screen. It's like George used blue screen way too much, especially for what the tech was able to handle at the time. And like, yeah, he pushed it forward a lot by doing it, but those movies suffer for that because nothing feels like a real fucking place. And this, I kind of get the same vibe a lot of the time. Mandalorian season 1 used the volume perfectly. I think it was really effectively done there, but I don't think this did it very well at all. And it makes me worried for Thor Love and Thunder, which used the volume a lot as well. It's like, so I think it's just like, it's a tool for the toolbox, but it's not the tool. It's not the be all end all solution for filmmaking. And I think Disney is using it as that right now.
Yeah. And I mean, as you're saying that, I am thinking back to like some scenes, and yeah, not to get too much into spoilers, but in episode 2, where they're kind of in that like underground area, like of that city, and kind of like running around street to street. Like, I think looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I did kind of notice it's a little flat. Like, it's not as polished, I suppose, as I might appreciate it. So I get that hesitation too. And I agree with you, Dylan, too. I'm struggling a little bit with how to like approach this review too, because it delivered on a lot of things that I wanted, like fan service, like Obi-Wan communing, not getting too much into spoilers, but communing with his old master, or kind of like having those small connections throughout the universe. Like maybe he's a little bit more connected with the rebellion, or with Luke and Leia, like those little connections I like. And the fan service, like his interactions with Vader, I really do enjoy. But I agree, there's a lot that could have been improved. There's some things that like maybe went on too long. There's definitely, it's not a perfect series. And I get what you mean, Dylan.
And I do think this is no fault of the show. I think it's the fault of the way episode 3 was written, because it's very hamstrung by that, because episode 3 ties everything in such a neat little bow. And I want to talk about the prequels either on this or on my YouTube channel at some point, because like it didn't need to cap everything off that cleanly. Like it's not consistent with Obi-Wan's personality, I don't think, to do nothing for 20 years. I know he's protecting Luke, but like I think the protecting Luke justification came after George wrote Obi-Wan being on Tatooine for 20 years. Like, and I don't think Padme should have died either. Like, both of those characters had time to like grow in between movies, and we could just assume that things happened. And the story continued. But so this this series is really tied by like, it has to justify why Obi-Wan leaves Tatooine, or why he's doing what he's doing in a way that is almost unfair to the writers of this show. But that's the world we live in. That's the story as it was written.
But well, and that's, you and I, in the past, you're kind of, I don't know how much you've watched Red Letter Media anymore, but I remember
I watched Best of the Worst, and that's it. But.
Okay. Yeah. Cause we used to be, good fans of them. And of course we watched the Plinkett reviews to death. So, those reviews do make some great points about Star Wars and the prequels. So I encourage all of our listeners to go check them out.
Well, the comedy of those reviews has aged like milk.
It
was like, if you were on the internet and YouTube in the late 2000s, early 2010s, like internet humor was not very PC. It was pretty bad. And those are no
Definitely.
exception. So be warned of that. But they do make good points about filmmaking in those videos.
Yes, and
I
they highlight a lot of good things about like why the prequels don't work and like why they're bad films. And when you watch them, it does, it kind of takes off those nostalgia glasses, and you're like, okay, so yeah, I get why that scene really sucked. But I bring them up because I remember that Rick, I think his name's Rick, he had this one quote in a video. I can't remember exactly which video it was, but he says that like Star Wars is a limited universe.
Rich Evans.
Rich, thank you. Rich Evans, thank you.
It's a small,
Rich Evans. Yeah, it's a limited, small universe. And what he really kind of meant by that is that there's these very set parameters in this universe of like what you can do, especially with the chronology here with like with the prequels, like you were just talking about, everything's wrapped up so well by the end of the third movie that there's this 20-year time gap between episode 3 and episode 4 that it's like, well, you can't really do too much there. Yeah. Because all this stuff has already been set in stone, and we can't
because you left the characters on the planet where we see them in the original trilogy. And like you didn't have to do that, but you did. So now it's stuck.
Yeah. And then like, in Star Wars, you're always going to have these like recurring tropes or motifs or things that absolutely need to be in it. Like you always need to see an X-Wing, or you always need to see stormtroopers, or you always need to see lightsabers. Like these are like the set parameters of Star Wars. And I think this show, I said it before too, that I think it did a good job of walking that middle line there between like going too far towards fan service or going too far one way and breaking the chronology. So I think the writers did a good job with what kind of material they had and what story they needed to tell here. But that is one of the things about Star Wars, is it's very limited. And as much as this show tried to expand that, like explore it a little bit more, it still was constricted by everything that's been already created in Star Wars and is already canon. And
yeah. And there's a definite sense for me that the universe is getting smaller. Because like they keep going back to the well of things we already know and have seen. And I haven't felt so like when we left the theater for The Last Jedi, I was really excited because I felt Rian Johnson kind of blew the doors off of what Star Wars could be. And I was very excited for like the future of this franchise now, because he really opened the doors to a lot of things. And episode 9 to me closed those doors right back.
And
it did. And I've just felt a shift when watching Star Wars outside of Visions, which I think Visions is spectacular. But outside of that, I liked Mandalorian season 1 a lot, but Mando season 2, Boba Fett, episode 9, I've and even Rogue One to an extent, I just feel like there's a growing sense of it's just like, just give them what they want. Just give them what they want. We'll do the same things over and over again. And to me, it's starting to kill my enthusiasm for future stuff. And it reminds me of what Rian Johnson actually said, and I couldn't find the exact quote. I was looking for it while you were talking, but someone asked him, like, do you think Star Wars will ever like become stale or fade? And and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, well, if you keep focusing on the same characters and keep it stagnant, like, yes, it will fade away and it won't be good anymore because you can only go back to that well so many times. But if you keep pushing it and bringing in fresh new ideas, then no, it can go on forever. And I am feeling that.
I feel
right
that
now. And I'm being super negative on this show, but I do want to say, like, the cast is great. I was excited to see Ewan McGregor again. I love how excited both he and Hayden Christensen were to come back. That was really touching to see. And I love that they are being embraced by the fandom because they weren't back then. And those movies' quality, and their fault. It's really nobody's fault. I think about this a lot too, because it's easy to like look at George and be like, why did you, like, people were telling you the scripts were bad. Why did you carry on? And then I remember it's like, well, that happened to him before with the original movie. All his friends told him his movie sucked, and then it was Star Wars. So it's like, I can almost see from his perspective, he's like, oh, I've struck gold again because this is exactly what happened last time. But the difference is like with the original one, he had other creative voices who pushed back a little bit more throughout the process, including his wife at the time, all that stuff. But yeah, sorry, I took us down a huge tangent, but
you're good.
Should we
we've got a lot to say about Star Wars, so
should we move to spoilers and get back to talking about the actual show?
I think so. We can only say so much about this show without getting too much into the spoilers, because there's things that I want to bring up when you're speaking, and I'm like, oh, I can't say that just yet.
I know, so, yeah, same.
But yeah, I think.
You go. I think the first episode of the show is one of the strongest parts of it. I really liked episode 1, which apparently is an unpopular opinion.
Really?
Amongst the internet. Yeah. Most people thought it was boring and nothing happened. I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted.
But yeah, like the first episode sets like it's really good at storytelling. Like that's what a first episode should be, is it should set the scene in as few words as possible.
Yeah.
And like we kind of talked about this with our Moon Knight episode of like how effectively within that first episode, it just communicated so much information within the first like 5 minutes. And that's what this first episode does here in Obi-Wan, is it communicates so much without Obi-Wan saying like one word.
Yeah. It does a lot of the stuff that Rey's introduction in episode 7 does. It sort of shows us both characters' daily routine and sort of where they are in their life. And for Rey, it's an introduction. For Obi-Wan, it's a reintroduction. And we kind of see like he's living this very mundane existence. He kind of hates himself. He lives in a cave and sleeps on the ground. And he refuses to help that young Jedi who comes to find him.
Yes, right.
And watching that episode, I'm like, holy shit, maybe they are doing what I wanted them to do. And it gave me some hope. But yeah, I thought that was one of the stronger elements of it. I wish they dove more into his PTSD. And it sounds like initially they did, but they felt like it was too dark and they changed it. And I'm like, no, this is the time to go dark. I mean, the character's in a very dark place. This is the appropriate time to make a more adult-oriented show. I think a more mature storyline than.
Well, yeah, and I think one thing that's like missing sometimes from Star Wars is consequences of actions, and like they kind of do a good job of this in the Plinkett reviews too, of criticizing the prequels of like they're always talking about this war that's off in the universe, and over time in Coruscant, what could have been a good thing is you see like traffic start to dwindle on the planet. The visual progression, things start to change, like, and you know you're seeing the consequences of the war up front and close to home. And they did kind of miss an opportunity to do that and create a more interesting story. And here with Obi-Wan, I agree. I think there should have been some more time spent on his PTSD and highlighting how deeply he was affected, because he was fighting the Clone Wars for what, like 5 years at least. And he watched all sorts of friends die and clones just sacrifice themselves for what? Nothing. Like just so one man can rise to power and rule the galaxy. Like it's I would have some crippling PTSD after having to like basically kill my brother and by a lake of lava, you know?
Right. And also and I think that's why the show misses a trick, and the idea of making a show for the fans sort of passes by a really interesting opportunity, because I think, and this is what I'll just say what I wanted this to be fully. So like modern day Obi-Wan is just like on Tatooine doing mundane shit. He's like plagued by nightmares, can barely sleep, can barely function, and he has to re-find his way. I didn't even want an action scene in modern day. And if you wanted action, you could flash back to the Clone Wars and have like the fun adventures of Obi-Wan and Anakin that we never saw in the movies, because they always are mad at each other throughout the entire prequel trilogy, except for like 15 minutes at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. So I'm like, give us some of the fun elements from the cartoon where they're actually friends, and you can use that as a contrast point to modern day so we can visualize what Obi-Wan has lost, because until their final confrontation in this series, I never bought them as friends at any point in live action. But and I want to talk about that final confrontation more later. We'll save it, but there's good stuff in that, and that's another difficult part I have, because I didn't want Vader in this show at all. I wanted Anakin in flashbacks to give Hayden another shot at the character. But also I think some of the Vader stuff is some of the better stuff in the show as well. So I'm of two minds about that. But yeah. And I like the dynamic between Obi-Wan and Uncle Owen as well. I almost called him Uncle Ben. Jesus Christ. Uncle Owen. Joel Edgerton is a fantastic actor. The best part of the Great Gatsby movie from a few years ago, like 10 years ago. But
oh yeah, I forgot
he plays Tom Buchanan, and he is literally perfectly cast. Like, yeah, he's so good. I think that movie is not the best overall, but he is perfect.
Sure, yeah. Well, and I think he does a good job as Uncle Owen here too. You know, we'll talk about the secondary characters here in a bit too. Yeah. But you know, I think, you know, the casting, they did a great job too of like not even just Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, but also young Luke and young Leia. They did a great job because they kind of look like younger versions of themselves, and you know, even without the haircuts, I think that they look great.
Yeah, little Leia was great. She was awesome. Like.
Yes, yeah, and it's, you know, well, I do like a lot about this series too, just because since we're talking about little Leia, you know, one thing that I have noticed about Star Wars series lately is that some of these story structures are getting a little repetitive. So in The Mandalorian, you have a gritty bounty hunter raising a child and kind of bringing him along on adventures here.
Yeah.
And then if you watch The Bad Batch, it's kind of a very similar plot line. You have some ex-clones guarding this kind of clone child, and they're going around having adventures. And then this one, Obi-Wan walking around with a little girl. So it's like, you know, they're kind of using this dynamic a lot of this gritty main character group and then this child group. And you know, when Leia first came onto the screen, you know, I think you and I both have a little of small PTSD from episode 1, and you know, not to like rag on that child actor too much, but
no hate for Jake Lloyd. He did exactly what he was supposed to do.
He did great with the material and the director that he had.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, just because of that, I'm like, oh god, a child on screen. They're going to be a main character on the show. But I think Leia did a great job. But you know, it is kind of this interesting narrative that keeps repeating.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a pretty common like narrative structure too, like The Last of Us, Logan, all this stuff, and like it's a satisfying one. It's fun to watch. But you're right, it is. It's like you got it, because even the Book of Boba Fett is kind of that too. It's like Boba Fett being a crime boss dad to the cyborg teens.
Oh right, right, those things.
Yeah, so I like the mods. I am a defender of the mods. I think, not to derail on that too much, but I think that was one element of that show actually doing something different and unique. And then they gave us 2 episodes of The Mandalorian and Luke Skywalker Adventures. But yeah, it does feel like they're going back to this well too much. You got to do something different. But I did like, I think some of the better parts of this series were Obi-Wan and Leia together.
Yes,
and their character dynamic. I think they played off of each other really well, and I think that is where it shines as a prequel to the original movie, because in my opinion, the main goal of a prequel should be to add something or recontextualize something from the original work. And them having this relationship really does add a lot, I think, to the original. Because it makes Leia comforting Luke at the loss of Obi-Wan like even sillier than it already was.
Yes.
But it's like
my entire planet was destroyed, but
and this guy I liked is dead, but you just met him and you're sad. So yeah, but whatever, it's fine. It's just a joke. But it like now these two have an emotional connection. So when Luke and Leia run out together and Obi-Wan looks over from his fight and sees them together and smiles, like it means more than it did before. And that's good. That's genuinely great.
He's seeing them being reconnected and he's like, well, my journey is complete and I can perish now. Like they're reconnected. And I agree. And I think the relationship in this series, it definitely provides, just like you were saying, more context for why she calls on Ben Kenobi in A New Hope and sends that message to him. You know, it's not just because of the Clone Wars, it's because she's had an interaction with him in the past.
Right.
And then it also provides some context for why she names Kylo Ren Ben.
Yes. Yeah. I forgot about that. It adds that too. Because then people were shitting on The Force Awakens for that back in the day, which I thought was weird, but it was like, that now it's even better because she has that relationship with him as well. But
it's like awesome, cool. It's nice to add some more context there of like who she was envisioning Kylo or Ben to become
Kenobi,
as her son. She wanted him to become this great Jedi, and that actually adds some layers to Kylo Ren's story too. I feel like, or at least one extra one, because he certainly does not follow the path of the Jedi.
No, he does not. And one more element that I actually really loved, it's just a little small bit, but in episode 4, they go to the Inquisitor's like underwater base or whatever. The episode overall is fine, whatever, but at the end when they're rescued by the 2 snowspeeder pilots who are part of like the smuggling ring that helps people out like escape, when the guy gets shot down, there's like the female pilot just reacts like she's super sad, obviously, but also I got this feeling that she was really surprised. Like she wasn't expecting him to die. And it gave me this feeling of like, oh no, this is real for you now. Like, because it made me think they've never done combat before. Like they were just helping these people out. And this was the beginning of the rebellion for them, which I think was a really cool little detail. And I remembered what I was going to write before we started recording that I forgot. One thing I've really loved about all of the Disney era media that takes place before the original trilogy, it really adds this element that like Luke, Han, and Leia carry the baton over the finish line. But the rebellion against the Empire was like the culmination of thousands of people's efforts over like 20 years. And it's like, and it's like Rogue One, Star Wars Rebels, this Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, like all of them are, and probably the Bad Batch too that I haven't watched, but it's like everybody is just doing like what little they can to just make like, and it's the Last Jedi touches on the spark too. Like the spark has to be kept alive. It's like we're seeing that for the rebellion right now, which is kind of cool. And it really emphasizes that like toppling an empire, it's not a one-man thing. Like you don't have your like hero who does it all. It's everyone together, and eventually it's a team effort. I think that's really cool. But
I like that too, and I think that scene, it was, I mean, I really liked that episode 4 too of when they visited the Inquisitor base. Like it was silly in a lot of regards, like how they walked out with like, oh yeah, Leia, just gonna get under my jacket, like don't worry, no one's gonna see or notice. And it's like, dude, you look like you're fucking Eric Andre walking into a car lot with the
I
big
will also
unironically
defend that once you're done, but you finish.
No, it's silly, but yeah, I really like that episode, and especially that that one scene where he's kind of like in the underground area and he's seeing like all those like preserved Jedi that are just like encapsulated in like that resin tar stuff. Like it's just so weird and creepy as fuck. And then like you can recognize some faces. Like I think one of those guys
was from the Clone Wars.
Old
guy, the old librarian guy who like helps Ahsoka in an episode.
But I remember that.
I would have preferred if they were more characters we knew, which is kind of hard because in the prequels they don't really make an effort to let you know any of the Jedi. But but I will defend the stupid like hide Leia under the coat thing. It is, first off, it is very dumb. I understand that. I'm not arguing that point. And the Empire should have noticed it, but the Empire as an organization has always been written as so arrogant and up its own ass that something like that would totally slip under their radar. How do they defeat the first Death Star? Because the Empire does not consider small craft to be any threat. Like, it's just like, so their entire defense is built around big things. And the Emperor does not think he can be defeated at all because he doesn't consider the fact that other people might turn against him or have compassion. So I think them missing this blindly obvious ploy by Obi-Wan is consistent with how they are characterized throughout all of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
It is still stupid, but I accept it.
Yeah, right. I accept it, and I get exactly what you mean. One thing that I will also say about that fourth episode too, as much as I liked it, I think there was a missed opportunity there.
Okay.
Because in episode 3 of this series, Obi-Wan gets into this duel with Vader,
Yes.
and he loses it basically, but he's saved by Tala. She gets him out of there, but he gets burned up pretty bad in that episode. So
yeah,
I'm of the opinion that episode 3 in this, or episode 4 in this series, could have spent more time on Obi-Wan's recovery from that battle.
Okay.
Especially since like he just regains his force powers like by the 6th episode, and in the 3rd one he doesn't really have them. It's like he's kind of shut himself off from the force, kind of the same way that Luke did. But I wish, maybe the like that 4th episode when he's kind of recovering in the back to tank, maybe they could have spent more time on that. Him recovering, kind of, that could have been a good moment to really dive into his mind and do the whole, really explore the PTSD and his memories of the Clone Wars. And I think that's an opportunity that they missed a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I liked episode 4. Okay, that location actually is from Jedi Fallen Order, the video game.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's where the spoilers for that game, but it's the final mission is there. You go in there to rescue someone, just like Obi-Wan does in this.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a good game. I don't think you have a system that can play it, unfortunately, but it's pretty fun.
I do not right now.
One of the worst maps in a video game ever. It's so hard to read, but it's a good game with a good story, and the sequel's coming up. But yeah, I think another positive element is just like Ewan McGregor himself. He's very good in this show. And the like little alien dude, the like friendly racist that they get a ride from in episode 3.
Oh yes, the Mole Man.
Terrifying character, because those people are so real.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
The people that will just turn a blind eye to fascism and just say, no, I'm here for it and I'm protected by them. So it's like, it was the right kind of characterization for that species too, because he really looked like one of those like the star-faced moles, that it's one of those moles that lives under the ground, but they don't have any eyes, so they're just kind of like searching for food with their mouth and like through scent and everything like that. And that guy, he had eyes in the show, but he definitely resembled like kind of one of those characters, like a mole rat. So a part of me was like, oh, that's the perfect one, who's just kind of going with the flow. And so I appreciated that integration there. And it is scary because people like that do exist, and they have existed, and they probably still exist today.
And if you didn't know, those are the type of people that allow things like fascism to succeed. They're like really crazy, outspoken people. There aren't that many of them. They don't have that much power. But when they get it, it's people like that guy who let them build it and hold it. So, it's the people that turn a blind eye to injustice are the most dangerous of all, because they are the ones that allow it to happen. But let's see, like Ewan McGregor.
We were talking about Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor. We got derailed by fascism. But I agree. I think Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen too, but they both brought such love and passion into these roles. And it's nice to see them, as opposed to the prequels, here they have actual emotional connections and they develop bonds with others. Like here we see Obi-Wan develop this entire relationship with little Leia, and it's very cute and it's endearing. And you compare that to all the just schlock from the prequels. It's night and day. You know, he's not spitting out these horrible lines that don't make any sense. It's like, okay, yeah, this kind of warms my heart.
The dialogue is less emotionally dry than the prequel dialogue was. And I did feel, again, I don't think most of this show works, but the parts that do work are Obi-Wan and Leia and Obi-Wan and Vader. And so I mean, I've been more positive on this than I think I thought I would be, because we're talking about that so much. But another element, another crucial character we haven't talked about yet is Reva, played by Moses Ingram.
Yes.
She is the third sister Inquisitor. The Inquisitors, if you don't know, are they're all former Jedi, and they helped Vader hunt down the remaining Jedi. Basically, they were introduced. I think they were introduced in Star Wars Rebels.
I think so.
But Reva, for me, Moses Ingram is great, but I think the character is a bit of a mixed bag for me.
Oh, really?
Only because I think the writing of her really suffers because they wanted to preserve that twist until episode 5. And it makes her, you know how sometimes in a movie where someone is like, they're a seemingly good guy and then it's revealed they're evil, and then their entire personality changes. And it's like weird and cartoony. It was kind of like the opposite of that. There were scenes where she didn't have to be like evil and psychotic, and she was, because they needed to preserve for episode 5 that she was trying to kill Vader and not work for him. And also, I don't understand why she went to go kill Luke.
Yes, that motivation was weird.
I don't get it at all, because that seems totally out of character for what she was trying to do. But
I agree. I think it was out of character for her. That said, I think it didn't make a ton of sense, like narratively wise. I think it's just more for like this full circle moment that she has, you know. She's before she kills Luke, she has this realization of like, oh, I'm becoming that thing that I've hated the most for all these years, have been like after to get revenge, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's like kind of that. I think that's what they were going for, is for her to have this full circle moment of like, okay, I need to put this behind me and make my own path now and not become Vader in my attempt to destroy him. You know?
Yeah.
But I agree. It is bizarre that all of a sudden she's like, okay, I'm gonna go kill his offspring that she doesn't know that he doesn't know about him, but it's like, come on, put 2 and 2 together, girl. Like,
yeah, I also would that not have worked better if she was just working for Vader and trying to impress him, and then maybe like the Grand Inquisitor comes back and he stabs her and leaves her for dead or something. I don't know. It just, the twist itself is fine, but if they were going to do it, I would have liked some moments before that are like, oh, she's not this totally evil person. And then I would like to understand her motivation for going for Luke. And I just don't get it. But I like, and the thing too is I liked her as a villain in this show. I think she was really compelling as the antagonist. So I was just torn on, because it felt like they didn't really know what they wanted to do with her either.
Yeah, I agree. And she is an interesting character to me too, because we have seen this kind of character arc before with Kylo Ren and Vader and that guy from Rebels as well. I'm blanking on his name, but you know, this villain redemption arc where you start out evil, then you kind of
Agent Callus. Is that who you're talking about?
Callus, thank you. I was forgetting his name.
That's my favorite character arc, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Like Zuko, best example of it is Prince Zuko. But yeah, it's my favorite character arc, is like villain or anti-hero to hero. It's great when it works.
Yeah, you do a complete 180 and it's a great journey along the way. And this one, I mean, we've seen this story before in Star Wars, but I like how they brought some kind of more originality to it, where it's like, okay, it's an Inquisitor who became an Inquisitor because of Order 66, and she's seeking revenge for it. So she's
Mhm.
not quite a Jedi, she's not quite a Sith. Like she's kind of complicated.
Yeah.
And throughout all this time, revenge has been like her sole motivator because she doesn't have any family and everyone's been dead. It's like I liked it, but I get what you mean about the execution. It could have been a little better.
Yeah, it was just because like I was bought into her as the antagonist for 4.5 episodes, and then we get this twist, and I'm like, excuse me. And then right after we get the twist, it made me confused at the episode 5 cliffhanger when it's like when she gets the little receiver and then it cuts to Luke. I'm like, what is she wanting to do? I don't know how to feel right now. Because the way it was shot, it made it feel sinister, like, oh, she's gonna go kill him. But we had just gotten the reveal that she wants to go against Vader. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be experiencing right now. I have heard that she's supposed to be getting her own spin-off or something. So I would assume it will take place after Kenobi, and she'll go do her own thing. Now, I was assuming she was going to die and it would be a prequel, but now I think it'll be a sequel thing. One more note on her, because we find out at the end that she's one of the kids from the first scene in Order 66. Just a PSA for production companies like Lucasfilm. That's the Star Wars equivalent of a school shooting. Put a fucking trigger warning in there, please. Especially that came out like literally days after the Uvalde shooting. Come on, get your shit together, Disney. Stranger Things did it. They managed to do it. It's like, just be responsible, care for your audience. That was not okay.
I agree. I think I could have swore they did it on this, like the final episode. But yeah, you're right. They didn't do it on the first one. So yeah, that should have been, that would have been more sensitive if they did that.
Yeah, it's just like, just think about it a little bit. And I'm fine with the scene itself. It was an effective scene. It was effective opening, but I'm like, you got to think about real world events a little bit when you're putting stuff like that in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Reva for me is a mixed bag overall, but I like the performance. I like the idea. I just wish they had done another draft of how they wrote the reveal for her.
Yeah, and her character does kind of like change a little bit too as soon as like Obi-Wan finds out like who she is, and like all of her mannerisms change kind of a little bit. And it's like, okay, could have thought this through a little bit more, but whatever.
Yeah. Like when she's in the room alone with Leia, she could have behaved differently. She didn't. She was like, she was acting nice, and then when Leia wouldn't help, she's like, I'm gonna torture you, small child. It's like, maybe don't have her do that. You know,
maybe get something else in there. Like, I don't know, bring in like that drone, or like, I don't know, do something else.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we talked about Obi-Wan and little Leia. I think I was looking for that earlier, but I couldn't find it. How did you feel about the Organas? They weren't in it a whole lot, but it's always nice to see Jimmy Smits back in the role.
Yeah, I guess they're fine. I don't have too many notes on the Organas because they've always been kind of boring to me, and I don't know. But I think it was an appropriate amount of screen time for them. And I guess the one thing that I will say is I did appreciate Leia's interaction with her cousin, and they're talking about the droids. That was very funny. That was like, oh, that's a discussion about privilege right there. Yes, more of that.
Yeah, and that was Leia's first scene, I think. And just right off the bat, I'm like, oh yeah, this is Leia. This is he was written very well. But I do like seeing the Organas a little bit more and seeing Alderaan a little bit more, because it adds a little bit more weight to it getting blown up in the original movie. It's not really that emotional of a big beat in the movie. It kind of happens, and then Leia's like, oh no, and then moves on pretty quick from it, all things considered.
That's very true. Yeah, I agree. It was nice to see like a little bit more of Alderaan, even if it was just like the higher ups in society. But that's fine. It was a good thing to include. And yeah.
Let's see. Well, let's talk about the side characters a little bit. You want to do that?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Because there's like a lot of other side characters here. between Obi-Wan and Vader, those are the main ones, and Leia, and then we got Reva, but then we also have, some of these other Inquisitors and these other kind of rebel sympathizers. Tala, for one. What did you think of Tala?
Is that Ilaria Sand from Game of Thrones?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, she was fine. I liked that she worked for the Empire initially and defected, and she was helping as sort of like a redemption kind of thing for herself. I actually liked the whole idea of the path, like the smuggling out.
Me too.
I thought it was really neat. I didn't think she was like, she could have used a little bit more depth, but she dies pretty quickly anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that she was a good rebel sympathizer, and she didn't totally grab me, but she kind of like did her job in the story, and I liked that about her. And it's because we know that she's a defector from the Empire. It is interesting to like compare her story. She's a side character. Compare her against Finn in the sequels, and it's like, wow, she had so much more agency in the 2 episodes of this series that she was in than Finn had in those 3 movies. Like it's insane.
I would say in episode 9 only. I think Finn had a lot of agency in the first 2.
Oh yeah, episode 9 for sure.
In episode 9, his job is to yell Rey's name, and that's it. Which is like pretty pathetic for
like something like this. Really should have been like Finn's story arc of like recruiting people, defectors, like getting that army together.
Fucking layup character arc.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
They just fumbled it. They dropped the ball, and but this is like the right archetype right here of like guiding people down the path.
I get so frustrated about Finn because it's like episode 7, he leaves the First Order. But he doesn't really like join the cause or anything yet. He's more just in it to help Rey, right? Episode 8, he learns the difference between not fighting for evil and fighting for good. And he makes the choice to fight for good. The natural progression to that, and the arc he had in the original script for the movie that they had, was that he was going to lead a stormtrooper rebellion. And they don't do it.
And then he doesn't do anything the whole movie.
And to make it even more offensive, they come across another group of defected stormtroopers who did not defect because of him. It's just a coincidence. It's like JJ, cool. Chris, you're right there. You're so close.
Just a little bit further and you got it, and it's perfect. But
oh my god, okay. Episode 9 rant over. But yes, you were right. The one goofy part about them again for her was again in episode 4 when she's just sitting at the desk like talking to Obi-Wan while there are other people around.
It's like the level of incompetency in this organization is staggering. If she could just sit there and be like, the plans are on deck C. Like
I know, like I give a total pass to Leia under the coat. This one I have at least whisper. She was just talking. She was just talking at normal volume. Like everyone, I've worked in an office. You have worked in an office.
Yes.
You can hear people from that distance very easily. Yes. It's not a game breaking problem. It's incredibly stupid, but whatever. I accept dumb stuff in Star Wars, but I was just like, just whisper, please. If she had just whispered, I would have no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, they did kind of have that problem in this series. Like Reva and Obi-Wan had that just very open and frank discussion about betraying Vader right in front of like a whole group of troops. It's like, come on, like really?
Yeah.
Even if you're whispering,
it's like no one's listening. Come on. Why did they keep doing that? They do it so many times in the show.
It's because all the stormtroopers just have like the Spotify going to their helmets all the time. They're just like, I don't care. I'm not paying attention.
Or they're like, I think it's canonical that like they can barely see. So maybe they can barely hear too. Because apparently the stormtrooper equipment is just like, I think it's in Rebels. Because remember like Rex puts one on and he starts complaining about how shitty the stormtrooper armor is compared to the clone trooper armor. And maybe that's it. Maybe they just like can't hear, they can't see. That's why they never hit their target.
Wouldn't be too far off, honestly.
Let's talk about Kumail Nanjiani. Is that his character's name?
I think it was Haja.
Haja. Yeah, that's
I think that's how they pronounce it.
Yep. I don't know why I said aha. I was looking at it in the notes and I just said it wrong. So he plays the sort of guy who sets up. He's a fake Jedi. He's pretending to be a Jedi, and he has this room that's all like rigged up to make it look like he's just using the Force for no reason to convince people he's Jedi, and he sort of is people's first step onto this like path, the smuggling path. Yeah. Interesting character, interesting idea for a character. I wish we'd gotten more of him.
Yeah, me too. Like it would have been interesting if they just expanded on him a little bit more, because he does, when we first meet him, he's kind of like a scam artist, you know. He reminds me a little bit of like Han Solo, or someone else who's just trying to make the credits, and then it kind of turns out, oh, he's actually a good guy, he's well intentioned, and he's helping out towards the end of the series, and he gets Leia home.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm interested to see if they'll bring him back for like another series, like maybe the Andor series or something.
I would be
like
surprised if they didn't.
Yeah.
But also, I saw Kumail Nanjiani actually retweeted a post about this character recently, and tying him to Han, actually. And since you mentioned it, this person on Twitter was like, I feel like this is why Obi-Wan kind of has patience for Han. Like, he knows Han is completely full of shit, but he can also recognize like the good heart inside, and he can see that because of this guy. Like, yeah, that's cool. I like that.
I like that. That's an excellent read. I love that, actually.
Not mine. I wish I remembered the guy's name to give them credit. But interesting. I wish he didn't just sit around for the whole second half of the show.
Yeah, if he had more agency, that would have been nice. But I liked him, and he was good comedic relief for sure in this series too. I also really liked Roken.
He's the head smuggler guy, right?
Yes. Yeah. I liked him a lot, and I would like to see him absolutely resurface in Andor or some other series down the line, because he's just a good actor, and I think he brings a lot of presence to it. And like when I was looking it up, he's actually the son of Ice Cube.
He played Ice Cube in the Straight Outta Compton movie.
Yep. I looked that up right before this, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't even realize that. So I'd like to see him do more in the Star Wars universe down the line.
Yeah, and then we also have Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, who Owen is in the first episode and then pieces out for most of the show, I think. It is interesting that he like just doesn't want Obi-Wan to give Luke a toy at the beginning, but he just throws it back. I like also the little detail that Obi-Wan gives Luke that toy. But
me too. Yeah.
I loved Aunt Beru got to say some words. That's cool. She doesn't get to say anything in the prequels. They're kind of badasses, which is cool. And I like that they know eventually someone will come for Luke and they're ready for it. That's cool. And they kind of hold their own for a pretty long time. Like
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I bet people are going to complain about this, because how did civilians hold their own against a Force user? Just like Kylo Ren in episode 7. She was stabbed in the fucking stomach. So she was incapacitated. So shut up.
Yeah, she's a leg down, and they're kind of they get a leg up off of that.
And they take her by surprise. Like
yeah, and I mean she honestly beats both of them. So, it's not like they won.
Right.
She could have killed Luke if she wanted to, but she didn't. And who would have known that Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru would have been strapped and ready to fight the Imperial loyalists? Like they were ready to fire a gun and everything.
Yeah. I like the little bit of depth we've gotten to their characters. They were just kind of like stock parent figures in the original, which is totally fine for what they were back then. Like
yeah, and they didn't have much agency in the prequels either, but again,
none.
Not at all needed, because the story's not about them.
No, but I think they worked really well here. And again, I really like Joel Edgerton as a performer, so it's nice that he came back. And the actress who plays Beru was the same actress from the prequels as well. Yeah, so both of them
I figured as much. Yeah, they were both great. And speaking of Owen, should we talk about Anakin/Vader? We haven't fully talked about him yet.
That is true. We have not. Yeah, we should talk about him. You start. What did you think?
chef's kiss. This I love this portrayal of Vader, and I think Hayden did a fantastic job coming back into this role. You can tell that he understands Anakin so well and who Vader is as well. Like Anakin's been a slave his entire life, not just to Watto on Tatooine, but also to the Jedi, and then to Palpatine. Like he's a slave to his emotions, and like he's never fully been able to understand how to deal with his emotions. And I think that this was just such a great portrayal of the character, not just in like the dialogue or like the presence, but also just like the movements. Like it just felt so well embodied. And I think Vader's, he's definitely one of the stronger parts of the show as well.
Yeah, I agree, even though I didn't want him in it. But I was getting pretty pissed at the show, actually, and the writers for a while, because I was thinking, like, if I were Hayden Christensen and they hyped me up for like 2 months is coming back only to speak into a James Earl Jones voice generator, I would feel really like infantilized. Like it was kind of pissing me off. I'm like, because I wanted those like flashbacks with them when they were younger to contrast with their relationship now. I thought that would be an interesting element. Eventually Hayden does get to do stuff. They actually do a flashback, which I didn't like at first, actually, because I was like, because Anakin in the flashback is the same like dickhead that he is in the movies, and I wanted Hayden to get the opportunity to play like the cool version of the character for once. But by the end of that episode, an episode which I think is the worst episode of the show by far, which I'll get to in a minute, but by the end of that episode, that flashback plays very effectively into Vader's arc throughout the modern part of the episode. So it was fine. And we'll get to the final duel, I guess, now, because that's the like crown jewel, I think, of the acting in this show.
Yes.
Ewan McGregor is the best he has ever been as Obi-Wan in this scene once he's cracked Vader's mask. Him apologizing to Anakin and like crying, it hits way harder than his like "you are my brother, Anakin, I loved you" speech from Revenge of the Sith for me. And Hayden fucking killed it in that scene. He's so good. And I love it shifting between his voice and James Earl Jones's voice. And he does so much with just this much face. Like, good on him, man. Like, he crushed that scene.
It was just beautiful. And like, say what you want about the cinematography and the all the technology and like how they shot the show. Yeah, I think there's some good critiques in there too, Dylan. But the like visual elements here of like, first it's kind of like the blue light is on his face, and then the red light comes up and he's got like the yellow eyes still. And it's just like, it's so menacing and like I
and
agree
you see the little hint of his like evil smile as he at the end of his speech, but it almost feels like he's giving Obi-Wan like a little bit of like, he's letting Obi-Wan off the hook a little bit too early on when he's like, "I'm not your failure," which is it's very dark, but also it gives Obi-Wan closure that I think he needs. Although I would make the argument that Obi-Wan and the Jedi at large are a little bit complicit in Anakin's fall. I think that's a big part of the point of those movies. But,
absolutely.
But I think Vader is also attempting to take ownership of his horrible situation as well.
Well, and I think it's, because of the original trilogy, you're kind of like, you need to find some way to workshop that into the content here. We all know that Obi-Wan tells Luke, Vader murdered and killed your father, and then later it's revealed, oh no, he's actually your father. But it's all like, his reasoning was from a certain point of view. And right here in this scene, I think that is another certain point of view. of like, well, I killed Anakin so I could become Lord Vader. And it's like, well, you're still the same fucking person, but point of view, sure. It all kind of circles back, and it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Yes. I think that line was motivated by filling the huge quotes for audio listeners plot hole from the original trilogy that is not a plot hole because Obi-Wan was just lying. And I think that's an annoying motivation to put that in, but the line works in context for the scene as well. So,
yeah. And I think this is definitely one of those moments too in this duel. Like, I think this is a great duel too. Like, out of all the action of the show, I think this is one of the better moments in the series. They both bring such great weight to their characters, and the emotion between each other too is really potent. It's powerful. You can really feel it, and like, both the actors do a great job of communicating that through their visual expressions, and bringing that sincerity to the character as well. And not even just this episode too, but with Vader in general, I think like in episode 3 of this Obi-Wan series, they did a great job of just really embodying his brutality as a character. Like, me, I read some of those Vader comics like a while back. Like, I read a whole bunch of them, and like, he is just such a monster in those comics. And in the movies, not so much a monster. I'd say he's still very menacing, but it's not like he's just fucking killing people at random for no fucking reason.
Right.
This show, he just fucking like breaks a child's neck just to try and get Obi-Wan to come out of hiding. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ, that was brutal.
Yeah, I think when we see him in the original trilogy, he's older and just cold. And at this point, when he's younger, he's a bit more vicious, I think, and that works. I want to talk about the episode 3 stuff in a second too, but the one part of the final duel that I did not like, in fact, I hated, was when Obi-Wan raises his arms up and uses a bajillion rocks as like projectile weapons against Vader. I thought it was very stupid, and I think it's referencing that image that some fan made of old Ben Kenobi on the Death Star with his arms up with like 50 blaster rifles behind him, all shooting at stormtroopers, like blocking Luke and Leia and like taking bullets. And it's like, to me, that is a fundamental misunderstanding of the character and the Jedi, in the same way that the fans wanting Luke to show up on Crate in episode 8 and like slaughter the First Order is a misunderstanding of the character. It's like, the Jedi, when they're doing their job right, are emphasizing non-violence and avoiding conflict when they can. And I thought it was a very silly moment in this fight that was not in line emotionally with where Obi-Wan is. And it was so different than the really tactile nature of the rest of the fight. Like, I loved him like mashing Vader's electronics with his lightsaber just out of desperation and trying to win the fight. But like, I did not like that rock bit one bit.
I get that. I didn't feel as strongly about it, but I get where you're coming from, because the Jedi are more about nonviolence and diplomacy, and it's, I can't even remember all their tenets, but it's like, it's like balance is all about like peace, and it's like you can't be aggressive and like peaceful at the same time, stuff like that, like So I agree with that read, that it didn't fully fit with what the Jedi philosophy is.
And I know the point of the prequel Jedi is that they have failed at this, but I felt when I was watching the episode that the show wanted me to feel that this was a moment of triumph for Obi-Wan, and that's not how that feels in the context of Star Wars. That makes sense. And especially like lifting rocks. I mean, it directly draws my mind to the scene at the end of episode 8 where Rey lifts the rocks and opens the door and for the rest of the Resistance. And the context of those is so different. One is about like saving other people and keeping the spark of hope alive. And this is like, I'm going to fucking obliterate this man with rocks. It's like, it just, it's like when you think something is kind of bad, but it reminds you of something really good, it just makes the bad thing seem worse. It was kind of like that for me watching it.
It's just an old man battering a crippled veteran with a bunch of rocks. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a thing a Jedi would do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like teacher assaults quadruple amputee former student with boulders.
Most misconstrued headline.
Well, yeah, it's like the misconstrued the original Star Wars one. It's like young farm boy is radicalized by rebels, blows up space station, kills billions,
becomes intergalactic terrorist.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ, yeah, that's an oversimplification of events, but it's right. It's accurate.
That's one element of Disney Star Wars expanded stuff that I haven't really loved is the they have like this need to humanize the Empire. A lot of times I'm like, don't do that.
No, they're faceless.
Don't do that. They're the like space fascists. Just keep them that way. In Lost Stars, a like YA book from several years ago, like the main characters start out on the Empire and then one of them defects, but like they had friends on the Death Star and they can never like forgive Luke. I'm like, don't bring that into this story. It doesn't feel good. It's like, it's like Solo. Why did you introduce the idea of fucking droid rights into Star Wars? Because now it's like, oh, Luke is a slave owner. Oh no. Yeah, now we have to contend with that. Why did you do this?
Well, shit.
It's like Star Wars is a pulp science fantasy. Don't complicate it in those specific ways. Complicate it in other ways.
Yes, we can use it for social commentary, but
maybe
not in every regard.
Not that one when our main character owns droids.
Let's pick and choose the ones. Okay, let's make a commentary about fascism. But slavery, maybe Star Wars isn't the right medium for that.
Yeah, it's like if you've already established that your main character owns droids and has no problem with it, and you aren't ready to interrogate that, maybe don't introduce it into your world.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, with Vader, just to round out Vader, final thoughts on him, just kind of reiterating kind of what I said about Obi-Wan as well. It's nice to see Hayden giving some decent dialogue and having some good character development as opposed to the schlock in the prequels. Glad to see that.
Yes. And with the flashback, I understand he doesn't look like his young self anymore.
Yeah.
But he looks similar enough. And I'll be completely honest, I prefer this to de-aged CGI nightmare Luke Skywalker in the Book of Boba Fett. So if it's either a guy in a flashback looks a little too old or it doesn't look like a human being at all, I would take the looking too old bit. Like, could they have de-aged him? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the budget is for this sort of thing. I feel like the whole show looked pretty cheap. So, and that was my problem with their fight in episode 3. Saying episode 3 is so confusing in the specific context.
I know,
because it's like it again, volume limitation. They're fighting on like a flat ground in like a gravel quarry, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. I think Star Wars should be kind of deliberate about where it chooses to have characters lightsaber fight. And that was like, it looks like you're just in like at a rail depot in Texas. And I didn't love that. I felt like the fight would have been better if they're hiding in the little building and Obi-Wan's like, okay, get her out of here. I have to go face him. And they just face in the town. They just fight in the little town. Because at least that was a place. And I'm like, why? I understand Obi-Wan's like scared and he's running away, but I don't know. The location just didn't work for me.
It could have been more interesting. And when you think back on it, it's like, both of their duels were on flat surfaces in these very empty areas. It's like, you could have chosen something that's a little cooler. Or,
right.
I don't
know.
At
least the planet at the end had like geography that was not gravel
or sand.
Sand would have been funny.
Oh yeah, that would have been hilarious actually. He gets sand stuck in his suit and he's like, "Oh, I hate sand."
Oh, could you imagine like Obi-Wan pocket sands Vader?
And then James Earl Jones has to say, give that horrible dialogue about sand again.
Oh my god.
I
have seen the defense of the prequels, which is maybe a little bit fair, that like, yeah, Anakin's dialogue is super cringe all the time, but he is like a 19-year-old who's never talked to a woman outside of his cult. So I guess
it's true.
Fair. It doesn't work for a movie main character, but it is true. He is a horny teenager who's in a religious cult. So
yeah, and he's always been a slave. So yeah, I guess that there's something there.
But yeah, we do really get to see his brutality though, and we see a nice progression of the relationship between those two characters. One that was not needed. It was left off fine in Revenge of the Sith to jump to A New Hope. As so many people are like, but remember, Vader says, when I last saw you, I was the learner. Now I am the master. It's like, yeah, that was Revenge of the Sith. You don't need to see another fight. You just want to because you like Darth Vader. I always hated in like Star Wars shows and stuff when people would say that. I'm like, yes, he was literally the apprentice when they last fought, and now he no longer is. Stop trying to justify them meeting again just because your fanboy brain wants to see it. You got what you wanted. You got two of them.
Yeah. Now let's never go back there again.
Yes. Which I think we have a couple more things to say about this before we move on to that part. But yeah, do you want to talk about poetry?
Oh, I always want to talk about poetry. It is kind of like a meme now, but it is true. That's kind of one of the things that I like about Star Wars is, it's got its own tropes. It's got its own poetic devices that it continues to come back to. And yes, there's an argument where, okay, we need something different. Let's not just keep going back to the well, but it's okay when you sprinkle it in every now and then. Like with the dialogue, I think they did a good job with being selective about the dialogue that they use. Of course, they were going to include the hello there because they had to.
It's a meme.
If they didn't, there would have been a riot in the streets and Lucasfilm would never make any other money.
I think there's an argument to be made that could be really distracting, but in the context of when it appears and the way it happens, I think it was cute and fine. I didn't have a problem with it.
It works perfectly. It's like when he's given that toy ship to Luke that we see Luke playing with in A New Hope, which is a nice little callback as well. I like that. And it's like some of that other like language they said, like, then my friend is truly dead, when he's talking to Vader. It's exactly reminiscent of what Luke says to Vader.
My father is truly dead.
Then my father's truly dead. And then Obi-Wan says, I will do what I must. And he gets into his classic Obi-Wan stance. Like
he
that.
does a little.
I fangirled a little bit about that. I was like, oh my God, he did it. Like it was perfect.
The final fight was pretty good. And I haven't talked about it yet, but like coming off of the penultimate episode, it was a huge improvement. There was still like shaky and handheld cam that wasn't working for me, but it wasn't as distracting. I think the penultimate episode of the show is like borderline unacceptable. The camera work was so bad. I could not tell what was going on half the time. I didn't understand the geography of where they were fighting and what they were holding out against. Leia was in that tiny little wire room for the whole episode,
right?
Like looking for a wire that was right in front of her the entire time, and her little robot was like right here, lit up and looking at her. I'm like, what this very like weirdly contrived situation that you didn't need to include, but is so stupid. It was very frustrating. And then the ship taking off and then Vader pulling it down, ripping it open looked really cheap and bad. There was no weight to it. It jolted too quickly. It needed to be slower. Like in episode 9, movie that I think is very bad, but when Rey and Kylo are fighting over the ship that they think Chewie's on, like you do feel the weight there, and that is absent completely from this. And it needed to be there. Also, the just like episode 9, there was a surprise second ship just out of frame that for some reason Vader didn't grab that one too, even though it was also right there.
That that part was a little like, what the fuck? I get you there, but
it was extremely contrived.
I didn't think it looked cheap per se, but I think it was a good visual aid to like demonstrate like Vader's rage and his like, he's like, I'm so close to the finish line, and it kind of like, going back to that prequel flashback of him, like his need for victory blinds him even in this moment. So I thought that was kind of neat, but I get exactly what you're saying there. And then you also
I agree. I agree with you on the character front for Vader. I think Vader's characterization in it is fine. It's just the visual element that I don't like.
Yeah, and then there are some problems with that episode, and we already talked about Reva and Obi-Wan talking openly in front of all those stormtroopers.
Yeah,
it's like, come on, like whatever. But the one thing that I will also say about that episode is I really enjoyed that duel between Vader and Reva. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty solid.
Like how he was just like avoiding her so easily, like it's effortless for him. He's like, I'm the master here, it doesn't matter what you do. It
was a solid duel. The Grand Inquisitor just like popping back up after being disappeared for so many episodes, just being fine, was weird. I know he has to be for continuity with Rebels, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but and then Reva gets the same injury. It's like, it's kind of funny at this point because Darth Maul got chopped in half, survives. Grand Inquisitor is stabbed in the stomach, survives. Reva is stabbed in the stomach, survives. Fuck you, Qui-Gon, I guess.
Yeah. Qui-Gon can't fucking hack it.
It's the same injury, and he just dies.
Like, one stab wound, I'm dead.
Yeah, and it does Kylo Ren gets the same injury, but like Rey heals him, I guess. So whatever, different. But
that one
like,
makes more sense. Yeah.
That one makes more sense within the context of that film, but it does introduce an element. I'm like, so now if someone is stabbed in the gut, I don't assume they die. So you kind of need to work to earn that back if you're ever going to kill someone by stabbing them again in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So kind of introduced a.
Yeah, make it really definitive. They're dead. Chop their head off, Count Dooku style. Like,
yeah. I mean, I guess like ever since Maul was reintroduced, we got some bullshit going on with death in Star Wars because chopped clean in half and he made it out. Whatever, it's fun. It's goofy.
Yeah. I mean, it ultimately made for a more interesting character with him, but yeah, it was bizarre.
Maul in episode 1. I'm sorry, I know there are people who love him. Maul in episode 1 is not a character. He's a cool looking obstacle. Maul in the Clone Wars and Rebels is a very good character.
So, yes, 100%.
Yes. Okay. So, go for it.
I was just going to go back to poetry's two other things that I noticed, because there's a bunch of callbacks in this series, like throughout, like they did a good job of sprinkling them in. But, I also appreciated how Leia's outfits, they mirrored her outfits in the OG trilogy, which was really cute. And she looked really good too. And then when Vader gets his mask like halved, that was a cool callback to Rebels and his duel with Ahsoka there. That was like,
and it's
awesome.
It's the other half of the mask too.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't pick up on that, but I thought that was a really cool thing to put in there too.
Yeah. What about pacing? How did you feel overall?
So I felt that is one of those areas where I think they could have done a little bit better. Because I feel like the pacing was pretty consistent throughout most episodes, but then there would be these moments where it would just jump around. Like we were just talking, Reva got stabbed and she's dying on this planet. Everyone leaves her, they walk away, and then the next minute she's on Tatooine.
Yeah. And
how
obviously,
the fuck did she get there?
Obviously, like time has passed, but you're right. Like, was there a ship that she had or anything like that? And I guess like plot holes are not usually something I care about, but it is odd. And I care more about why she went to Tatooine than how she got to Tatooine. Same way I care about like, why did you bring back the Emperor for episode 9? I don't care how he got back necessarily. It's stupid, but whatever. It's like, what was your motivation for putting him here? What was Reva's motivation for going to Tatooine? It's just like,
right.
It's just it's not clear to me.
Yeah, a little messy. Do you think that maybe this series could have done better if it was like a movie instead of
Yes.
a 6 episode thing? Yeah.
Yeah, well, the original plan was for it to be a movie, and then
Mm.
I think what I understand is that after Solo bombed at the box office, they got spooked from doing these spin-off movies for some reason. And I've always been in favor of Star Wars remaining a scarce thing.
Yeah.
So I was always like, back when Disney first got it and it was one movie a year, I'm like, this is a little much. After episode 9, pump the brakes. And then, of course, now we have the content roadmap of like every upcoming project, and it just fills me with dread. But yes, this should have been a movie. You would have had to change some stuff, obviously, but like it probably would have helped the budget, with the look of the show. Like this feels very much made for TV, even more so than some of the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
And the Mandalorian. Like it feels on par with Book of Boba Fett visually for me, which is not good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think the movie could have made it a little bit more succinct, and like because in this series there's a lot of them like kind of being chased around, going from one location to the next, avoiding the Inquisitors and avoiding Vader. So it's like, if it was a movie, there'd probably have been less jumping around, a little bit more of a streamlined narrative, I think.
Yeah, but, and I'm curious to see if someone will re-edit this into a movie and see if that happens.
I'd be into watching that whenever that comes out. If someone is out doing that, then please send us a link. We'd love to check it out. Or at least I would. I don't know about Dylan,
but okay, so two more notes. One, we got a Qui-Gon Jinn cameo, very last scene. How did you feel about it?
I liked it. Okay. I'll say that. I think it was earned, and I could have taken it earlier. Like if they wanted to do more than one mention of him, that would have been kind of cool. But I thought it was good. It's a very interesting choice of like words too. Of like, took you long enough. It's like, is that really what he would have said? But maybe.
Qui-Gon is such a strange character in the Phantom Menace. So like, who knows?
He is. He doesn't have too much humor, which is like
no. Not from memory. I haven't watched The Phantom Menace in a long time though. But I also like the cameo, but I feel like just one or two more times Obi-Wan trying to reach out to him and failing would have done. I think he says like master twice, once in the first episode and then not again for a long time, and then once in the 5th, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but just a little bit more like focus on him trying to commune with Qui-Gon, because we don't really get a scene dedicated to him trying to do that, do we? It's more just I don't think so. I think he just like we catch like the end of him trying or something like that. But I would have liked a moment where maybe after his first confrontation with Vader, that would have been a really good time to have him like sit down and try to meditate and not be able to commune with Qui-Gon. Like take a good like 90-second to 2-minute scene to just do that. Because like that's kind of one of his lowest points, right? Because Leia has been kidnapped and he's injured. So before he goes to save Leia, that could be a good time for him to do that. But I like the cameo fine. I like that Liam Neeson just straight up lied about being in this show to keep it a secret. He was like, yeah, I'm more of a movie guy personally. I don't like to do TV stuff.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden there he is. It's like, cool.
Yeah, but one more question for you.
Yes.
This was originally envisioned as a movie, but then re-envisioned into a mini series. But since then, they have said that they might come back for season 2. Why and or how?
Please no.
Yeah.
Because to me, this is perfect right now. How we have it, these 6 episodes, you could say whatever you want about them, but now all the storylines are tied up again.
Yeah.
Everything is done. It's in place. There's just leave it be. Like seriously, like I don't see how you can justify a season 2. Like they'll find a way to justify it, but like this season gave me the right amount of fan service. It gave me like a good narratives for me. personally, I loved it. I thought it was a great series. If you do a season 2, I think that's going to ruin it. I think that's going to really make me upset with Star Wars, and that's really going to set in that Star Wars fatigue. Like, they just need to know, like, just give it like this many episodes and then move on to the next thing. Move on to Ahsoka, move on to Andor, move on to Ocelite, whatever. Like, give me more diversity. Acolyte, thank you.
Acolyte. Yeah, I agree. I think and the words Kathy Kennedy used when she was talking about doing this kind of give it away for me, because it's like, well, the fans just tell us what they want and like we'll deliver what they want. And so for me, it's like there is not a story motivated reason to make a season 2 at all.
Yeah.
Zero. So they shouldn't do it.
I agree.
And there was very little story motivated reason to even make this at all, but I still wanted it because I wanted to see Ewan McGregor like act his ass off in a movie about him like emotionally recentering himself. But there is no narrative reason to continue. The bow is even tied tighter than it was after episode 3. You can't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, and you just risk just frustrating Star Wars fans even further than we already are. So yes, I agree. They should not do it at all.
Yeah. So final thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I am satisfied with what we got here. This appealed to my nostalgia. It delivered on action. There's good plot development. It gave us a better emotional connection between Vader and Kenobi than we had in the prequels, which is incredible that I feel like saying that. And I think it's a pretty good series overall. Is it the best Star Wars series? I don't know about that. I think The Mandalorian's still pretty good. And it's tough to beat the OG trilogy for sure too. But what about you, Dylan? Closing thoughts?
I think it had some bright spots. I think the added element of Obi-Wan and Leia knowing each other and bonding was really great. I think I was glad to see Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen get another at bat for these characters, and I do think the dynamic between them is better now than it was before. But other than that, I really not a fan. I don't have I don't know. It just didn't land for me properly. But there were enough moments to where I didn't hate it. I just, it's better than Book of Boba Fett, I think, even though shockingly Book of Boba Fett was almost its own thing in more of a way until it wasn't. But yeah, I don't know. I just, my enthusiasm for this stuff is kind of waning at the moment. I hope it gets reinvigorated by Andor, because Andor does look really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And it looks visually better because they actually use sets and locations and stuff. But I think I need Star Wars to do something else, something vastly different. We're getting Vision season 2, which is really good. But I want to see what Rian Johnson's trilogy is going to be. I want to see Taika Waititi's Star Wars, and I just want like something new, man, like something out that's not Rebels and Empire again. And I'll lump First Order Resistance into that too. Like I need something different. So
I feel you. Fair enough.
Also, give me some fucking video games. Holy shit.
Yes, give me a new fucking Battlefront, please. Like something. Like I need something.
Yeah. But so not super hyped on Kenobi, but I do love Ewan McGregor. He's one of my favorite actors. So that's nice.
I think he did a great job. But
other stuff?
Let's switch to our last segment of the episode, talking about other stuff that we've been reading, watching, doing. Dylan, what have you been up to lately?
A lot, actually. So I downloaded and played Fall Guys for the first time yesterday. That was super fun.
Nice.
Have you seen that game? Do you know what it is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's just like obstacles and you compete against other players and people get eliminated throughout the round.
Looks like a blast, yeah.
It's really fun. It's fun to play with people. I saw Lightyear with my sister. Cute movie. It doesn't have the emotional weight of Pixar's best, though. It was a fun concept. The first 30 minutes of it is really, really great. The rest of the movie is good too, but it doesn't, like the best Pixar movies make you cry. This did not. But fun, and then let's see what else. I started Lindsay Ellis's new book, Truth of the Divine. It's a sequel to Axiom's End. It's a sci-fi first contact trilogy set in the Bush administration era.
Ooh, that's neat.
The first one was really interesting, and I'm liking the second one so far as well.
Is that Bush Senior or
no? But W.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, it's this. I think she's in high school or just out of high school, and she comes across an alien, and things progress from there. And it's pretty interesting series so far. It's meant to be a trilogy. Cool. There are 2 out. But Westworld came back last night, so I watched the premiere of season 4 of that. I still really like Westworld. I don't know how the rest of the world feels about it, but I think it's a very interesting show, and each season is always reinventing itself. So that's great.
Yeah, I definitely dropped off of it. I need to restart that 3rd season.
Yeah. And then continuing with Miss Marvel, which is really, really great. It's has the most visual personality of any of the recent Marvel stuff outside of like Multiverse of Madness, I would say. And if you haven't started it yet, I would really recommend jumping on it. And then
I'll talk about it in a bit. Yeah.
And then The Boys.
The Boys.
Did you watch the most recent episode?
Hero-gasm. Oh my
God.
That was disturbing, and oh my God, yeah. That was pretty epic though. I like
it's great. I like
team up.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love The Boys. I'm excited to talk about it in an episode later this summer.
Yes. I was super excited because The Boys is just so interesting, and we've already talked about it on previous episodes. And
I do think it's funny. Character. He's a great character. I do think it's really funny that there are some people who are only now realizing that Homelander is the villain. I'm like, yo, what?
Really?
Because
the 3 seasons in,
because like the producers of the show have talked about it before. It's like, guys, he's a Trump parody. He's Donald Trump, but superhero.
Yeah, he's a sociopath. Like, he's the worst person you could think of. And
but I love him as a character because he's a monster, but you also like feel just a little bit bad for him, just a little bit, because he's just he's so pathetic. He's not as pathetic as the Deep, but he's pretty pathetic.
Yeah, he's very pathetic, and The Boys has been fucking great this season. I can't wait to talk about them because I've been watching that too. And Miss Marvel, I've been slowly watching as well. I think like one of the most recent episodes, I think the 2nd episode, I just paused and didn't come back to it. It was like when they were at the party.
At the Avenger Con or the house party.
The house party. Yeah. There's just something about like I think it's like a few things. Like first, I just don't like a lot of that high school cringe stuff.
Okay.
It's just kind of difficult for me. But like I think it's also because like this show is definitely geared towards a different demographic than I am. I think they're trying to appeal to the younger female demographic with this show. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's my interpretation of it. I think that's what they're going for with the show. So I think that combined with the cringe can be was just a little off-putting for me at the moment, but I need to pick it back up because I know that it's just going to keep getting better and all that stuff. And it's also like, Spider-Man's had that kind of like cringe high school scenes too. So, maybe I'm just very particular about it.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because Kamala Khan, when they made her in the comics, she's one of their more recent heroes. I think she's only been around for like 10, 15 years. And when they created her, I believe the intent was she is the 21st century Peter Parker. So she is the young high schooler. I think she's their first big time Muslim superhero as well. So I think a lot of Peter Parker DNA is meant to be there, and I kind of find the cringe a little endearing as well. But
Sure.
I can understand how it could like when she's crushing on that dude. Like, yeah, it's like, oh no, a high schooler with a crush. That's awkward to watch, I guess, but it's also cute at the same time.
Yeah. I think it was like right
I
at
just
that
love
moment.
the little like text messages that appear in the graffiti on the walls or in the signs. It's like I think I talked about it before you'd started it, but it's like Marvel needs to do stuff like that more. Like even in their biggest budget movies, like more style, more fun. Like embrace the don't go full Joel Schumacher on it, but like embrace the goofiness of your material a little bit more and integrate it into style. You know.
Yeah, I feel that. I've also we just started watching that show Veep. It's funny. It's actually really clever. So yeah, we just started that. So
I need to finish that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm surprised we didn't start watching it sooner. Because it's got so many characters or like actors that I love too. And then I just watched Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs the other day for the first time.
Nice.
Cute little kid movie.
Yeah.
Was expecting, there's not too much that you can do with that premise of, oh, it's raining food from the sky. Like, like you can only go so far. I feel like with that premise, but I don't know. It was still cute. And then I'm still just plugging along at RuPaul's Drag Race. It's All Stars season 7. It's a fun time, fun old prideful romp.
Yeah. Do you watch the Umbrella Academy?
I do not. I saw that they're coming out with another season, right?
It's out. I didn't realize, so I'm gonna watch it after this, I think. But no, it's a really good, different brand of superhero story as well. Stars Elliot Page amongst others. So that's and they will so like as you know, Elliot Page is a trans man and transitioned recently, and everybody was kind of wondering like how are they going to address this in the show, and apparently the season starts with Vanya, who has been Elliot Page's character before transition, and then just goes off and it's like, yeah, I'm Victor, and I always was, but I didn't know, and then everybody's like, okay, cool.
Nice.
So that's good.
Simple enough.
Yeah, so cool, great. I'm excited to watch it. I've heard it's good. I'm like, the first 2 seasons are great. It's like a dark kind of X-Men type premise almost in a lot of ways, because it's a school of young super people who are adopted by this guy, but he's not your Professor X. He's kind of a real piece of shit.
Excellent.
Yeah,
okay.
But the show kicks off in season 1 where it's like they were like this kid superhero team, and then the story starts with them all as adults. They've all gone their separate ways, and they reconvene for their dad, the Professor X guy's funeral, and then the story goes from there. It's a very interesting show. There's a talking chimpanzee in a suit as well.
Excellent. I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Monkey business.
But I think that's gonna do it for this episode, right?
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. We really appreciate everyone who's listened to our episode so far. And since this is a Star Wars episode, I will encourage you guys to go check out our Visions episode. We did an episode on Star Wars Visions a few months ago. And where we ranked each of the 9 visions that came out, 8 or 9 of them. So yeah, please check that out. And we are planning to do more Star Wars stuff in the future, so keep a lookout for future episodes where we're talking about the OG trilogy or the prequels. I'm sure we'll have plenty to say about those escapades as well.
Yeah, we'll do some. Maybe we'll make a habit to do like a Star Wars Day special for trilogies. But
I like that.
Until next episode, where can people find you online, Miles?
People can follow me on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, where can people find you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and on Twitch at D-Day_movies. And that is all. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Send it to a friend if you want to. But until then, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you so much. Bye.